From WXXI News, this is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. Our connection this hour will be made on Saturday, October 25th, the first day of early voting. When you head to the polls and you see judicial races on your ballot, what should you be thinking about as you cast it? Voters in Monroe County will see 2 judicial races on their ballot in this year's general election, State Supreme Court and Monroe County Family Court. This hour, we sit down with the candidates in both of those races to discuss their backgrounds and what they want you to be thinking about when it comes to the job to be done on the bench. We'll talk to the candidates for New York State Supreme Court in our first segment of this hour, and then later we will welcome the candidates for Monroe County Family Court Judge. Let me welcome the candidates who are in studio with us now, running for New York State Supreme Court. Hello to Joe Dinolfo, a candidate for State Supreme Court Justice. Hi, Joe. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. Next to Joe is David Siguenza, candidate for State Supreme Court. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Across the table and just making it into the room, they're all so busy. You're all cutting into your schedules. Kristina Karle, welcome back to the program. It's nice to see you.
Thank you. I apologize for skating in right on time, but court went over. So.
Most of you are in the exact same position, so that's good. Pop your headphones on. It'll be easier to hear, Kristina. Thanks for being here. And hello to Darius Lind, also a candidate. Thank you for being here as well.
Great to be here, Evan. Yeah, I did also just wrap up court and dash over
You're
here.
all hustling over. So,
got to do our jobs first.
You
right?
do. So I want to give you all some time to kind of introduce yourselves to our audience, a little bit about who you are, a bit about your career, and a bit about why you've decided to pursue this position. We'll go around the table. We'll start with Joe Dinolfo first.
Thank you. So, I grew up first in the city of Rochester, Mount Reed and Lisle. My parents immigrated here from Italy, and soon after they began working at Kodak, we moved to Gates. I graduated from Gates Child High School, and after that, UB, and then law school, and then in between, I got a master's in public administration. I've been practicing for about 32 years. The first half of my career was in private practice and firms, and for the last 15 years, I've been with the Supreme Court Appellate Division in a litigation role.
Why do you want this position?
I've always had community service in mind. When I was in elementary school, I was a safety patrol. When I was on the board of Big Brothers Big Sisters, in college, I was volunteering at the legal service for students at UB, and for the last 21 years, I've been a volunteer at the Egypt Fire Department in Parrington. So again, this is just a natural progression for me to continue my public service.
That's Joe Dinolfo. The microphone is yours, David Siguenza. Tell us about you.
Great. Thank you so much. So my name is David Siguenza. I'm running for New York State Supreme Court because I think that the best judges have the broadest perspectives in life, or could look at matters or cases or people's lives that appear before the judge from multiple different lenses. So what are my lenses? I'm a Latino immigrant. I immigrated to the U.S. in the late 80s with my parents and 2 older brothers from Cuenca, Ecuador, with typical immigrant life, typical Latino immigrant life, feeling like another, but also at the same time, my parents really concentrating on teaching us what hard work and education can accomplish, right? I never thought I could be a lawyer. Definitely never thought I would be in a room sitting here with you, Evan Dawson. So I'm a father of 2 children here. I live in the city of Rochester. I've been an attorney now 15 years in the community. I was a prosecutor the first 8 years, handled everything you can really imagine. Also handled sex crimes, domestic violence cases, vehicular assaults, vehicular manslaughters. I then had an opportunity to work with the city of Rochester, and I actually worked in the Corporation Counsel office where I represented different departments. I was part of a unit that actually wrote some of the legislation based on guidance from counsel and defended the city in lawsuits in New York State Supreme Court and federal court. Then had a great opportunity to apply to become a support magistrate in family court, which is something I'd never really handled family court cases, but I became a magistrate. Was appointed, had my own courtroom, deputy, court staff, and heard cases every single day brought by folks in our community regarding child support, paternity, spousal support. Very much believe that it's important for judges or courts to provide to the folks that appear before them not only the law that judges are looking at, but then the facts that relate to the law, and then rendering decisions that are really well explained for everyday lay people. After that, I was actually in private practice. It was something that most people don't do. Most people don't leave those great positions, especially when you have your own courtroom. But I really wanted to see what private practice was like, and actually handled divorces in New York State Supreme Court, family court matters, criminal defense matters, and represented all walks of life. And then really public service called back to me. I'm not really big on making money. I'm really about helping people. So I'm actually the first assistant conflict defender now. We're an agency that represents folks that cannot afford to hire a lawyer in family court, appellate matters in Rochester City Court. And one of the big things for me as a U.S. citizen now, 20 years, half my life, I'm 40, is protecting people's rights and making sure that those rights are always valued and honored through the court system, through me as an advocate. So I'm running to be a judge because I understand all the different seats in a courtroom. I've done it all. I've been a prosecutor, defense attorney, support magistrate, and I believe that perspective, as well as my personal perspective, really gives a great opportunity, not only for the court system, but for folks to know that there's someone there on the bench that understands a lot of where they're coming from. So thank you.
That's David Siguenza. Let's turn to Kristina Karle across the table and tell us about yourself, Kristina.
Hi, my name is Judge Kitty Karle. I'm currently serving in Ontario County Court. As a judge, I was elected in 2018 and took the bench in 2019. In the outlying counties, we're what's called a multi-hat judge. So what does that mean? I preside over family court, criminal court, the youth part, and in 2021, I was appointed to be acting Supreme Court Justice. So over the last almost 8 years, I've presided over 7,000 cases. Very serious criminal cases, very serious family court cases. Every family court case is serious. And I've also had the opportunity to now preside over the youth part. Before that, I was a prosecutor. I went to law school at University at Buffalo Law School, and I interned in their special victims unit. And it was then that I knew that was my path, to serve victims, to fight for the most vulnerable. Child sexual abuse victims, rape victims, domestic violence victims. And so I had that opportunity in the Monroe County DA's office. And I ended up being the supervisor of that unit with my deputy bureau chief, Jason McBride. We had an incredible team and handled the worst of the worst cases. And during that time, as a supervisor, and I was always in the courtroom, I was never a supervisor who asked people to do things that I wasn't willing to do. And I loved being a trial attorney and helping so many people, kids, adults, and it was my passion. And during that time, I handled tens of thousands of cases. I have in the courtroom handled 10 homicides, most of which were the most horrific against women and children. And I supervised so many cases, and it gave me the experience to be a judge. I've done it. And then after I left the DA's office, I was in private practice with the legendary and iconic Joan D. R. O'Byrne-esque. And it was during that time that I learned matrimonial law under her tutelage, and I learned family law. And that's exactly what I'm doing right now. And so my experience in front of the bench prepared me for the bench. So why am I doing this? And I've been asked that. You're already acting supreme. I don't want to be acting. I want to be legit. And I have a well-oiled machine. I know the processes, and I want to elevate them. I want to go to this next level, to serve in a higher capacity, not for me, not to be a big shot, but to serve the constituents of the 7th Judicial District. And it's 8 counties. And it's been a long 9 and 10 months, Evan. We have to go everywhere, be everywhere. I have children. I have a mother with dementia that I'm her caregiver. But thank goodness I'm a multitasker. And I'm just really honored for this opportunity to be here and to continue the service that I'm already doing.
Cayuga, Livingston, Monroe, Ontario, Seneca, Steuben, Wayne, and Yates. All of you are putting some miles on the odometer. I imagine so.
I switched from my Bronco to my Honda.
That's Kristina Karle. Darius Lind, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Evan. Really appreciate being here and appreciate seeing my friends who we're on the tour. We're seeing everyone at all these events, but you're all my friends at this point, even though we're running against each other.
Amen.
Just wanted to let you know who I am, Evan. I currently serve the 7th Judicial District as a court attorney referee, where I hear family court matters. I preside over custody, domestic violence cases, and other family court issues that come to my courtroom. I have my own court, make my own decisions, and I do that here in Rochester. I was just in court minutes ago before I dashed over here, and I'll be going down probably alongside Judge Karle to Canandaigua in Ontario County this afternoon, where I hear cases regularly, and I get deployed throughout this district. So I have a good sense of who the people are in our 7th Judicial District in that 8-county region, what their needs are, and what their lives are like. And I learned that because I've been a practicing attorney. It's coming up on 20 years. I started in 2007, so I'm in that middle ground between 15 and 20. And I worked throughout the 7th Judicial District as a legal services attorney when I first started, representing domestic violence victims, representing people who could not afford attorneys during the foreclosure crisis. I fought to help keep people in their homes. I helped people obtain disability benefits, fight evictions that were unjust. I've done that in almost every one of the counties in this district. After that, I worked a little bit in private practice, but like David said, I've always had a calling to service. So I worked at the Monroe County Public Defender's Office. That's right here in Rochester, which is an amazing organization. There, I specialized in family defense, mostly in family court, representing parents, mostly in abuse and neglect cases. And I developed a real keen understanding of the intersection of poverty, the legal system, and what everyone's needs are. And then after that, I had the opportunity to work for the courts, to use that experience that I'd gained over the years as someone who makes the decisions. And in that role, I take the compassion that I've gained from representing people in all walks of life, in all environments in our district, and I apply it on the bench. But I'm also efficient. I know how long cases can take and how justice delayed is justice denied. And I make sure that we make decisions because that's really what I have to do as a referee. And when I become a Supreme Court justice, that is my charge, to make decisions, to be fair, to be just. And that's why I'm running, because I want to do that on a higher level, like Judge Karle said.
So there are 4 candidates, 4 websites. We're going to link to them in our show notes for listeners to learn more. But a great opportunity this hour to hear more about the thoughts of these candidates. You don't often get that. And one of the questions we get a lot is, well, does your party matter? So yesterday we had 4 retired judges on this program. 3 of them retired from the New York State Supreme Court. 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats on the program yesterday. And I told all of them, with the exception of Rick Dollinger, who was a New York State Senator, but I was joking with Rick about that, but I said, your work on the bench, I covered you as a journalist, all 4 of them, for years. I never would have known their politics personally. And I thought that was a testament to the Republicans and the Democrats in the room yesterday. And I'm curious to know, and I'll ask all of you just briefly. So, Darius, when people say, well, what party are you on? Does that matter for the position you're running for? Do you think it should matter to voters?
Should it matter? Absolutely not. I can tell you in my role as a referee, I've never, ever wondered or inquired what somebody's political position was on anything unless it was directly related to the litigation. As a justice or anybody arbitrating matters in the court, we ethically are not considering what else is going on. So it shouldn't matter. We have to run as partisan candidates because that's the political apparatus that we're in. But to that end, before I took a nomination from any major political party, I did this, and David Siguenza also did this. We obtained signatures to be on an independent ballot line called judicial integrity because of this concept. I don't think judges should be partisan in nature. I don't think the administration of the law is partisan. So That's what I tell people.
Kristina Karle?
It matters because it's the vehicle and how you get to the bench. It is important because of the party affiliations in the 8 counties. But does it matter on the bench? Absolutely not. Lady Justice wears a blindfold for a reason, so that everyone has equal access to the law. Not if you're rich, not if you're, who you know, the color of your skin, how many zeros are in your bank account. Everyone deserves equal access to the law. So when I'm on the bench, I don't see any of those things. I don't see political party. I see human beings in family court in the most difficult situation with respect to being able to parent your children. People who are in court, in criminal court, victims, and people who have been charged with crimes. It doesn't matter the color of their skin. It doesn't matter their socioeconomic status. And when I park my car, it's right behind the courthouse. I walk in every single day and I look up at that beautiful Lady Justice and I look at that blindfold and I know what my responsibility is. And it makes you unpopular sometimes because people think they can call in favors and, well, I helped you get to the bench. No. On November 5th, hopefully, by the grace of God and by the voters, when I am elected your next Supreme Court Justice, I will continue in that same vein. And if you question this, I have 8 years of experience. Look back, vet me, and see how I act in that courtroom.
David Siguenza?
No, I would echo everything that Judge Karle and Darius Lind said. As candidates, we have our parties. But really, it should be people over politics, right? And that's why I say that my resume as a human being and as an attorney is what matters most. And most people actually, when it's a non-party type of event and hear me speak, they never know what party I am because I have this diverse resume. Prosecutor, conflict defender, where do you land? Where I land is making an oath to follow the law, keeping an open mind, hearing testimony, receiving evidence, applying it to the law just like we want from every single judge, and then rendering a decision consistent with that, whether it be culpability on a civil matter, guilty on a criminal matter. So I think we all, four of us, would agree that that's the role of a judge, and it's the person.
Joe Dinolfo.
Well, other states actually have judicial races that don't have party affiliation. But again, I agree with all the candidates that everyone comes to court with their problem. Everyone deserves respect and justice. When I go out on a fire call, when there's a motor vehicle accident, someone has a medical condition, I'm rendering service. There's no question as to, your party affiliation, how much money you have. When I'm performing CPR on people, it doesn't matter. We're helping that individual and their families.
So let me ask all of you. I mean, you're all very cordial with each other, and it's refreshing. It's nice. It's nice to get people from what are still different political parties in the same room together during a campaign, and I appreciate all of you making time. And I know our audience does too. So I don't want you to throw elbows and set your decorum aside, but I want you to tell us a little bit about what you think is an important characteristic of a judge and a justice in this position, and maybe a reason to think that you would stand out in the crowd for that. Joe Dinolfo, I'll start with you on that.
Again, I think that your perspective is important. Where you come from, your family background. For me, it is all about the best judges are the ones with the greatest integrity and the greatest ethics. And these are things that we practice every day, not only in work, but also outside of work. And, again, when, not to be morbid, but when on your tombstone, what do you want it to say? For me, I wanted to say devoted husband, devoted father, and a devoted firefighter. So character matters.
David Siguenza.
Very few candidates have the breadth of legal experience that I have, working as a prosecutor, being a magistrate, representing the residents of the city of Rochester as a city attorney, and then being a conflict defender. I don't know many candidates or judges who have that background. Adding on the fact that I'm a Latino immigrant and I understand that perspective of not just being Latino, but just being one of the others, I think that's what really helps folks when they see my resume, when they hear me, or when they meet me. I think that really resonates, and it's something, a perspective that I believe strongly about, all those perspectives, and strongly that folks know when they meet me and talk to me that I don't want anyone to ever feel like an other, not only in society, but in a courtroom or in a courthouse, because that courthouse is the public's courthouse, and judges are public servants. And when people meet me and I explain that to them, they know in their heart of hearts that I believe that to the core of my very being.
Kristina Karle?
Well, you asked what makes me stand out, and that is my experience. I am a seated judge. I'm a seated acting Supreme Court judge. I have the experience to continue and elevate and do the work. I also was a prosecutor for a very, very long time. When I went into private practice, I handled, and people were shocked that I did defense work. But it was so important for me to do that so that I understood both sides of the aisle. And so now as a judge, sometimes it's hard because I'm a referee and I'm not still doing it, but I've had the perspective from both sides. And that is so critical. I don't have to learn on the job because I'm doing it. And although I do wish I could speak Spanish like you, David, I have my perspective. I'm the first female Ontario County Court judge in Ontario County ever. And the path to get there was not easy. You can't believe what people said to me. Who's at home watching your kids? You're too little to be a judge. I remember it was a lady, I think, who had 10 kids. She said, "How are you going to do such a big job?" And I said, "With my pants pressed and my lipstick on." But the adversity on that campaign trail and the unconscionable things that people said to me, that because I'm a female, I can't do it. But I have the opportunity to preside in the courthouse where Susan B. Anthony was tried. And I read her book in anticipation of unveiling the drive right behind the courthouse from, Court Lane to Susan B. Anthony Lane. And I was the keynote speaker. I read that book, and the quote that I cleave to is failure is impossible. And that's what I'm taking on this campaign trail to be the first Supreme Court Justice female in the outlying counties. But what do I have? My mentor, Murph, when I was in law school, he took me under his wing. And the number one thing that two things, own the courtroom. And the second thing was your word is your bond. And when you give your word to somebody, it's everything. I have honesty and integrity. And if I look you in the eyes and tell you what I'm going to do or not going to do, I think about Murph, and my word is always my bond.
Darius Lind.
Thank you. I think what I bring to this that sets me apart is that I have a track record. I currently hear cases in court. I make really tough decisions, and I do it with efficiency and compassion. If anyone had occasion to talk to the litigants and the attorneys, the court staff, the court security in my courts, what you would hear is that I am efficient with my work, I am just, and I treat everyone with compassion. I am acutely aware of the struggles that bring us to court in all types of cases, and I pride myself on being caring, but also administering justice. People don't get away with things, I hold them accountable, but I do it in a way that is compassionate, and that is because I have had a career devoted to public service. I have sat in the trenches with people in the worst moments of their lives, and I know what it's like, but I also know what is required by our justice system. And I think that knowledge and the proof that I'm doing it already is why I believe I'm the most qualified candidate. I do just want to reiterate there are 2 openings this year, but obviously I'm just speaking for myself.
Sure. So 4 candidates, 2 spots. So I want to squeeze in 2 listener questions, and then I want to remind our guests in studio that they're going to eat into their colleagues' time for family court if we go too long. But I do appreciate them all being here. We're squeezing a lot in this hour. All of their websites will be linked in our show notes, and I encourage listeners, keep learning more as much as you possibly can before you cast a ballot. And I would also encourage you to, if you feel a little bit paralyzed when it comes to voting for judges, that's why we do these programs, but their websites are out there. There's a lot that you can still learn about the candidates. The 2 quick questions from Canada, I'll go back around the room, starting with Darius. Andrew wanted to know, do the candidates support law enforcement? Alex wanted to know about public institutions losing trust and if the candidates think the courts have lost trust. So we're going to try to hit those. You get a crack at both of them. Darius, so first, Andrew says, do the candidates support law enforcement? Briefly on that.
Sure. Very quickly, my website is lindforjudge.com for those people who don't have time to go to the show notes.
Yep.
Do I support law enforcement? Absolutely. I have to work with them in a security capacity every day at court. I know that those are some of the most special people I work with every day, and those are the ones who keep me safe. We also have to coordinate very closely with our courts and law enforcement to serve documents, bring people to court. Crimes that are committed, we have to coordinate with them. I have only respect for law enforcement.
And the second question from Alex is, public institutions are losing trust in this country. Do you fear that the courts are losing trust to the public?
I think that's always a concern. The way that we combat that is to be transparent about why we're making decisions, even in the face of opposition. If I make a decision, I need to explain why, and I need to give a clear reason, and that's how we gain trust.
Very direct answers there, everybody else. Look at that. All right. Your website, by the way, Judge?
judgekarle.com.
And
it's Karle.
Yes. And Kristina Karle, Andrew wants to know, do the candidates support law enforcement first?
Well, yes, when I was a prosecutor, I worked with 13 different law enforcement agencies in Monroe County and developed an unbelievable bond with them, because to be successful as a prosecutor in the courtroom, they do so much work. And to prove it, I've been married to John Pinkaitis for a long time right now, and he had 35 years in the Rochester Police Department, handling homicides, child sexual abuse, hostage negotiation, SWAT, you name it, he's done it. And so we're a law and order family. And I just want to plug that I am speaking at the Shields of Honor on November 1st in Geneva, where they're honoring the Geneva Fire Department and the Geneva Police Department, and men and women who put their life on the line for us every single day. And it's an honor for me to be able to do this. And are people losing trust? You know, I know in our courthouse, we strive to make sure that they can trust us, that we follow the law. And, you know, people, oftentimes the loudest people who are complaining are people who've been convicted and sent to prison, or maybe didn't have a successful outcome in their perspective. So, you know, I always say that 50% of the time people love me or hate me. But I think in the Ontario County Courthouse, we are doing our best to strive for justice.
David Siguenza, Andrew wants to know, well, let's do your website first. Go ahead, David.
www.siguenzaforjudge.com, Siguenza.
Andrew wants to know, do the candidates support law enforcement?
Absolutely support law enforcement. As a prosecutor, as Judge Karle noted, interacted with probably thousands and thousands of police officers, not only as part of my duties, but just in everyday life. They serve an important function in our society, and 100% support law enforcement.
And Alex wants to know if he says public institutions are losing trust. Are you worried that courts are losing trust?
I do worry that courts can lose trust. However, that's why it's important to vote and have the right folks be on the bench and in the courts upholding what justice means.
Joe Dinolfo, your website, sir.
Yes, Joe Dinolfo for SupremeCourt.com.
And Andrew wants to know, do the candidates support law enforcement?
The short answer is yes. I have my grandfather, my brother-in-law, friends, my cousins. They all are in law enforcement. You want as a candidate and as a father and as a husband, what I want for my family is safety and security. The best way is to support our police officers and firefighters.
Are you worried about, Alex wants to know if you're worried about courts losing trust of the public?
I think that if we have judges who have integrity and character, in sitting on the bench, respecting people, explaining their decisions, that trust will be ensured.
Well, I want to thank all of you for giving us your time, giving our audience your time. 4 candidates for 2 spots on the New York State Supreme Court, and you've heard from the candidates now. Thank you all for being here. If you're elected, that means we probably don't get to talk to you for a long time. But I will say there are always times to talk to journalists, and you've always done, all of you have done a great job with that. Thank you for making time for us today.
Thank you, Evan.
Thank you very much, Evan. I'm always available for coffee.
I'm always available for coffee, too, to anybody who wants, especially if someone else is buying. We're coming right back talking to candidates for family court in Monroe County.
Supporting your favorite programs on WXXI TV and radio is just a click away when you go public at WXXI.org. It's a convenient and secure way of supporting an important community resource. WXXI.org. Go public and pledge your support today.
You're invited to take a journey across time and style. From music by Bach and Mozart to Brahms and salsa. It's Soundscapes on the next Live from Hochstein with pianists Bonnie Choi and Beverly Smoker. Experience this musical journey in person at the beautiful Hochstein Performance Hall or tune into the live broadcast right here on WXXI Classical, Wednesday, just past noon.
After the Hunt, a new drama from Luca Guadagnino about dark secrets on a college campus is now playing at the Little, starring Julia Roberts, Andrew Garfield, and Ayo Adebri. Learn more about After the Hunt at thelittle.org.
This is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. We've been talking to candidates for New York State Supreme Court, and we're going to turn our attention to candidates for family court. And I want to thank Edward Horahan and the Bar Association. They've been wonderful to work with for years on this. They really do a great job coordinating attorney and judges' schedules to make sure that people can come in here and you can hear them before you vote. So I want to thank them for doing that. And I want to now welcome our next guests who are running for family court in Monroe County. Tonia Ettinger is here. Tonia, welcome to the program. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
And Mallorie Rulison is here as well. Mallorie, welcome to you.
Thank you for having me as well.
We're just going to give you guys the floor. This is what we do. Is we let listeners know that you each have a website. We're going to link in our show notes, but Tonia's is ToniaForFamilyCourt.com. Mallorie's is MalloryForFamilyCourt.com. Mallorie Rulison, why don't you tell listeners about yourself, a little bit about your background, your qualifications, and why you decided to seek this post.
Sure. I am a Rochester native. I was born and raised in Brighton, New York. When I came back from law school, I lived in the city for 9 years, and I've been a resident of Pittsford for the last year. I went to Our Lady of Mercy High School, followed by St. Lawrence University, followed by Syracuse University College of Law. In between my summers, I always came back home to Monroe County, where I interned for the Monroe County Law Department in their juvenile prosecutor's office and their children's services. And that's where I really grew to love family court, so much that in Syracuse, I actually obtained a family law certificate, and that was my concentration in law school. Although upon graduating from Syracuse, I actually started doing a little bit of real estate, but that actually opened up the opportunity to work for Tourette, Christo, Selzer, and Andalina, where I again practiced family law and matrimonial. And that's where I really learned to connect with clients, learned to zealously advocate for clients. I've done both sides. I've done mothers, I've done fathers, I've done grandparents. So after I did that for a little while, I actually got an opportunity to come back and work for the Monroe County Department of Law, thinking that they were going to put me back in juvenile prosecutor's office or children's services. I jumped right on it and said, absolutely. And they actually assigned me to the litigation department. So I represented all the departments in the county of Monroe, from slip and falls, trip and falls, to representing the sheriff's office. It actually also gave me an opportunity sometimes to help out with the juvenile prosecutor's office doing their appeals or doing a fair hearing. So it really tied in all my love. And then through my connections there, I actually interned, or I actually obtained a job with my current boss, the Honorable Kevin Naska, who's a Supreme Court justice, and I'm his principal law clerk. So I do his research, his decision writing, and for the first 3.5 years, they actually assigned us to matrimonials, which was fantastic because that brought me back to my love of working with families, doing custody, visitation, child support. And, they moved us to the civil department, and that's when I learned that there was an opening for family court, and my love for this community and families, I jumped on it, and that's why I decided to run.
That's Mallorie Rulison. Tonia Ettinger, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. So again, my name is Tonia Ettinger. I'm running for Monroe County Family Court Judge. I was born and raised in Western New York, and I've been practicing law for 21 years. And I've dedicated the last 16 years exclusively to Monroe County Family Court because I really think it's the most important court in our judicial system. I worked for 10 years at the Legal Aid Society of Rochester, where I was an attorney for the child, and I represented children in family court in every type of family court case heard by a family court judge. And there's at least 18 different family court case types, everything from custody, visitation, abuse and neglect, juvenile delinquencies, persons in need of supervision, and termination of parental rights. So in that role, as an attorney for the child at the Legal Aid Society, there was a tremendous caseload. I was able to balance all of those caseloads, trying hundreds of cases each year before a Monroe County Family Court judge. In 2018, I was fortunate enough to run a campaign for Judge Fatima Reed, and she was elected to the bench, and she took me on as her principal court attorney. So for 6.5 years, I was able to give her advice as her court attorney, writing decisions, and again, analyzing all of those cases through the lens of a family court judge. And then from all of that experience was recognized, quite frankly, and I was appointed to the bench in June of 2025. So I have been your newest family court judge. I have been dedicated to these families for nearly my entire career. And this is really my life's work. I know how important family court decisions are and how much life-altering things that can come about based on the decisions that family court judges make. And I'm committed to continuing to make those decisions, to serve and to make those decisions in the best interest of the children of our community.
That's Tonia Ettinger. So Tonia Ettinger, Mallorie Rulison are here. And probably when you talk to voters, I suspect you hear what we hear from our audience, which is sometimes a question about why are you on a ballot line? Why are you on a party line? So to the extent that some voters this year who vote are going to only see your names in your party, if they're a Republican, they might vote for Mallorie Rulison. If they're a Democrat, they might vote for Tonia Ettinger, knowing nothing else about you. The last segment, we had the Supreme Court justice candidates on, and they all agreed that this really is supposed to be a position. Judgeships are really above politics. You're not there considering, well, this person in front of me, this family in front of me, this parent in front of me, what are their politics? How do they vote? I know you're not going to do that. And I think everyone has agreed on that. So let me ask you a different version of this question. And I'll start with you, Tonia. Do you think there's a difference in general, not specific to this room, but in general, about how Democrats would do this job that you're running for versus how Republicans would do this job?
That's a very interesting question. I would like to think that the answer is no. Although what I bring to it, I am the Democratic endorsed candidate, but what I'll also say is that you will also see on the ballot, will have the judicial integrity designation after my name, because I do think that judges, no matter their party, need to have integrity, and that is very important. So as having that designation, both as a Democrat and having that judicial integrity, I am committed to asking the tough questions, to making sure that the families that come before me are heard, regardless of party affiliation. Because you're right, it doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. I want to make sure that your family is served, because I know that the families of our community, when they're served, we're stronger, when we're better together, when we're stronger as a community as a whole.
Mallorie Rulison, same question for you.
Yes. This is usually one of my favorite questions to be asked, because I do explain to most people, yes, in New York State or in Monroe County, we have to pick a line to run on in order to be on the ballot. But in the end, I'm not here to play politics. I am here to ensure a safer, stronger community for Monroe County. I've never had a family walk into the courtroom and I say, "Excuse me, tell me what party you are before you walk in that door." I'm here to learn the facts of your case, to engage in an open dialogue, and to really help you come to a resolution. I want to be a source of hope and, help you reconcile all of your differences. And in my opinion, that doesn't come down to party politics. That comes down to your demeanor and your ability to communicate in the courtroom.
So let me ask both of you about I don't know if this is sort of a governing philosophy that you would have, or your thoughts in general as a judge in this position as you're running for family court. But I often think about the fact that I try not to judge people by their worst day or their worst moment. I wouldn't want society to only consider my worst day. At the same time, when you end up in court, sometimes it is your worst day. Sometimes it is the hardest moment. And sometimes someone on the bench has to consider everything in front of them and make a determination for a family, for a child, for a number of different ways that could impact people in a household. So, Mallorie, how do you view the role of a judge that says you're going to try to deliver what is needed for our community, for families, for society, with the right amount of, sort of oomph and grace?
Right.
Those are technical terms.
I love those technical terms. One of the phrases I like is balanced accountability. It's holding people accountable for their actions, but at the same time recognizing the fact that people can change. I mean, when we have matrimonials, you get the videos of what you were saying, the worst day in somebody's life. Somebody just had a day where they snapped and they're screaming, and that's not what they're typically like. But really, it's, again, engaging in the experts, the attorney for the children, and listening to the overall circumstance, always putting at the forefront the best interest of the children. You want to be there to be a resource, actually, for the families. And so I think it's important to say, hey, yes, you had a bad day. Yes, you should recognize those actions were not appropriate in that circumstance, but how are we going to move forward? How can I help you stabilize yourself and your family and build that stronger foundation for you ultimately?
What do you think, Tonia Ettinger?
And I've seen these families for the last 16 years because, again, I've been there every single day for the last 16 years. And what's important is to ask the tough questions and to get to the root cause of what's going on with these families. I want to make sure that I'm not going to see the next generation. And sometimes it's just treating people with compassion. These are their children, their families, their lives, their most important people in their entire world. And they just want to be heard. So sometimes the parents just need to vent, and I let them vent. At the end of the day, I'm going to follow the law, and I'm going to do what's in the best interest, but I'm also going to let them be heard.
And maybe related to that is a question on your thoughts about the importance or how much emphasis should be placed on not breaking up families or seeing families stay together versus making a decision that says this is not a safe situation. So we've talked to researchers who've come on this program to tell us about the way that American systems have sometimes separated families, and sometimes the data or the historical record indicates there might be racial or socioeconomic components, and the damage that can cause. At the same time, we had a conversation just a few weeks ago with someone who works with a Center for Youth now, and when he was a teenager, he ran away from home because of consistent, from a parental figure is all I will say about that, consistent abuse and hardship, and was basically put back in that spot repeatedly until he became an adult and has only now sort of grown into a feeling of safety and security outside of that. So, I know every case is different, and I'm not asking any specific cases, but I would like some ideas on how you maybe mitigate and kind of navigate those kind of waters. Judge Ettinger, I'll start with you.
I think it goes back to listening to the attorneys, listening to the caseworkers, listening to the attorney for the child, and asking the questions and finding out what services that families need, not only the parents, but also what service services do the children need to ensure that if that child's going back to the home, and generally when we're looking at those abuse and neglect cases, the goal is initially for that child to return home if that child is being removed initially. And when I'm looking at those cases from the bench, I know the tools that I have at my disposal to put in place that I can order the Department of Human Services to help this family, to make this family stronger, to allow that child to safely return home. And I'm going to implement those services. But there are times, as you mentioned, where it's not going to be safe for that child to return home ultimately. So what can I do to support that child so that child can live independently, whether that's in an independent living program or safely with a foster family?
Briefly, before I turn to Mallorie Rulison, do you think in general too many families end up broken up?
I think it depends on the judge.
So not in every courtroom. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Mallorie Rulison, same questions.
Yeah, I think one thing that's also very important in understanding is trauma, recognizing and understanding the impact of trauma. My goal would be to never re-traumatize a child, never to put him or her in a worse situation than they already were in. So it's really, again, listening to the attorneys, listening to any psychologists that you have in the mix, using resources that are available to really reduce the amount of trauma and to also recognize the trauma that they've already been through. The last thing you want to do is re-traumatize these children.
In general, are too many families broken up?
To be honest, I think it depends on the situation. I've seen couples that don't stay together, but they co-parent amazing. And they co-parent better than some people that are together, parent together. So, still building a solid foundation and a solid family where they may not live together. Are they broken up physically? Yes, but sometimes they come together stronger.
Kathy and Shiloh writes to say, Rand Paul and Angus King are independent candidates at the federal level. Andrew Cuomo is running as an independent this year. Non-affiliated voters in Monroe make up the second largest voting bloc. I see no reason why a judge or justice could not run as an unaffiliated candidate. But that being said, which party they choose to affiliate themselves with does influence my decision. It tells me which party and platform they are willing to align themselves with or accept support from. That's Kathy and Chila. Is that fair, Mallorie? What do you think?
I appreciate everybody's ability to have their own decision. Some people do vote party lines, but all I can reassure voters is that when somebody comes before me in the courtroom, I'm basing my decision on the law and the facts in front of me, not party politics.
Okay. Tonia Ettinger, what would you say to Kathy and Chila?
I think that's fair, and I think that's also why I sought that independent ballot line, the judicial integrity line, and that required signatures from voters across the county from all parties, including blanks, Republicans, Democrats, and conservatives.
Down to our last few minutes, let me squeeze in Kevin's question from Pittsford. He says, can the candidates explain why it's important for a judge to have lived experiences that help them understand and identify with the families who come before the court? How does that personal understanding influence fairness, empathy, and the quality of justice delivered? About 90 seconds apiece here. Tonia Ettinger, you want to start?
Thank you. Thank you for that question, Kevin. I grew up in a small town in Holly, and I'm the oldest of four, a single mother. I grew up in poverty. We moved around a lot. Issues of domestic violence and substance abuse. I know that's a lot of the things that the families that come before family court also struggle with. So I am mindful of those same struggles that my family struggled with, that the families who are coming before me are facing. And so I am able to recognize those struggles of what those families are going through. And I know that at some point in my life that somebody changed my life for the better. And if I'm able to positively change the trajectory of someone else's life, then this whole journey is worth it for me.
And Mallorie Rulison, go ahead.
I've dedicated a majority of my career to public service between working for the county of Monroe and currently working for the state of New York. And in my experience, I've worked with a multitude of different people, different backgrounds, and I've learned the importance of really listening to them, understanding, and learning from them as well. I think you have to be open to learning and open to having a good dialogue with people to understand their backgrounds. And I do think that that's extremely important on the bench, understanding each side of each party and making sure you never lose sight of the individual person.
That's Mallorie Rulison. It's MallorieForFamilyCourt.com.
Correct, and it's MALLORIE.
And Tonia Ettinger, it's ToniaForFamilyCourt.com. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And Tonia is Tonia. Once again, I want to thank Edward Horahan, the Bar Association. We've had a lot of folks who've been helping us over the years coordinate these conversations because, no surprise, if you work in the court system, if you're a judge, if you're an attorney, you're a clerk, you work in a lot of different places, you're very busy. It's not easy to coordinate these, but these conversations are among the most popular for our listeners because they really matter. It's really one of the only chances to hear candidates for a position that doesn't get a lot of attention, but it's an important decision. You've been hearing throughout the hour as we talk to the candidates for State Supreme Court Justice and the two candidates for Family Court, their ideas about the work, their view on the value of finding the right person, and I want to thank them for giving up some of their schedule and coming in and talking with us. Mallorie Rulison, great to have you. Thank you for making time.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Tonia Ettinger, thank you for making time for the program today.
Thank you for having me.
And more connections coming up in a moment.
This program is a production of WXXI Public Radio. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of this station, its staff, management, or underwriters. The broadcast is meant for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or use in another medium without expressed written consent of WXXI is strictly prohibited. Connections with Evan Dawson is available as a podcast. Just click on the Connections link at WXXInews.org.